Well, but now you got guys like, Andrew Tate that has built this personality, right? Like, that's not how he really is, right? But that's the show he puts on out there to drum up. Now, I think he's in prison right now,
Yeah.
or he went to prison,
Yeah,
right?
that's
So,
what I hear. Yeah,
I
yeah.
think he's still in jail waiting to go to prison.
okay,
So
all right. Well,
In
but I mean,
Romania, which is where I'd want to be in prison.
right? But that's a case of a guy taking hype way too fucking far, right? He built this character, he built this persona up, and I think he's actually doing harmful shit, legitimately harmful
Not
things
even a
to
not even
people.
a question.
I never really understood personal branding for the longest time. It was always this idea of, why should I put myself out there? Why should I show up in the world? Why can't I just do the traditional sales model of cold calling, reach outs and networking and the likes? And then this whole concept of personal brand hit the marketplace, and it flipped the freaking traditional sales model somewhat on its head, because the world moved from less cold transactions to more of this authority. I want to buy from a particular person because I've heard their voice and I trust what they're saying and talking about, so I want to be around that. But it's not easy building a personal brand.
well, and I think it's something that entrepreneurs and small business owners struggle with. And personal brand's been around longer than that. It's because I remember when I did the huge pivot from doing the public speaking to actually having time on target focused on providing a consulting service. I made the actual conscious decision, that I didn't want a personal brand. I wanted it to be time on target, and not Kevin Snow. And that was probably me, an overreach or an overcompensation, going from where I had a really cool job and I was the brand, I was the product, I was everything, to I don't want to be the product anymore. I want what we do to be the product, to be able to build a team around it. So I think I completely went like overcompensating. It's like, ooh, there will not be a Kevin Snow brand now. It's all time on target.
It's funny. I literally just Googled when did personal branding, and the term actually came out in 1997. I didn't realize it was that far back. And the thing for me that happened was I was still selling Sandler training, and I was a few years in. And one of the biggest deals I closed, the CEO of that company goes, "Donnie, you need to understand one thing." And I said, "Okay, what's that?" He goes, "We didn't buy Sandler training." I said, "Okay." He goes, "We bought you." And this whole idea flipped in my head. I had been selling Sandler. I wasn't selling Donnie Bobby. And, now I'm in this position of, well, shit, how do I show up in the marketplace and what do I do? And it was a point of contingency between me and my then business partner, because I quit wearing the Sandler apparel, the Sandler hats and everything else. And I started showing up in unbranded stuff and came out as me, right? That's the phrase that just came out of my mouth, is I came out as Donnie. And
welcome, Donnie.
I'm here. No, but I mean, I really started showing up as me. I started talking more like me, and started closing that divided gap of there's home life Donnie, work life Donnie, and making that all one person. And interesting is my sales skyrocketed, because I understand that people were buying me and then getting, what I sold. But like you, there's this weird ups and downs of, okay, what do you say out there in the marketplace to create that personal brand? What's off limits, right? What shouldn't you say? And a lot of
and I think there's this whole disconnect between product versus service sales.
Yes.
You and I both are in Well, obviously with Success Champions, we're totally in the service industry. But even with Time on Target, I'm still providing a service. I don't supply a tangible product. I'm not selling a car. I'm not doing a transactional sale. I think a lot of people who are in that world look at the personal branding and say, well, I don't need to, because I'm selling a product. I need to rely on the market and the brand that I sell. Even when I was doing Nextel, that was we relied on the brand for Nextel, and they were very iconic in the marketplace. Bright yellow, walkie-talkie, the chirp. Everyone knew the walkie-talkie thing, and it wasn't so much, oh, you're Kevin. Oh, you do walkie-talkie stuff. Oh, it was the opposite way.
You're the Nextel guy.
Yeah, I'm the Nextel guy.
Yeah.
So, I think that is a big issue for business owners because they, especially if they came up in the product sales world and now they have their own business, they don't understand the importance of having a personal brand.
So Chad King is a software sales guy, works for, he's the vice president for a company called Ioka. It's a software company. And what Chad has done brilliantly that he hasn't even fully wrapped his head around yet is he's become known as the barbecue guy throughout all Texas. Like, if you're going anywhere in Texas, man, you reach out to Chad and go, okay, this is where I'm going. What barbecue do I eat? Because he knows it. He'll tell you what's good, bad, and the worst. And he did it with bourbon for a while, and now he's working on rum and everything. So the dude just is in that market space. He's been able to keep his software company top of mind by talking about fucking barbecue sauce, right? And different barbecue restaurants. You can't help but think about associating one without the other. And it's, I'm actually talking to him and potentially my brother Keith about launching a barbecue and bourbon podcast where they can both geek out because they got ridiculously stupid amount of knowledge on bourbon that I just can't even comprehend. But that's the idea, is that people get to know you for like a certain thing or a certain vibe, style, whatever. And it keeps you top of mind in the marketplace. I mean, when we were doing a lot of podcast coaching and Kevin and I were telling a lot of people how to launch shows, it was more about what do you geek out on and talk specifically to those things. And I remember one time Elizabeth looking at me and saying, if people realized how much of a geek you actually were, I'm not sure they do business with you. And that's when I started talking more about the Harry Potter and the fantasies and going to the Ren fairs and everything, because I realized I wasn't putting out enough stuff out there that where people could resonate with that message and style. But it's not always been easy. I mean, you're really getting into the personal branding side of things now. As an introvert, that's got to be extremely difficult I would assume it's more difficult than I had trying to make that leap.
So it's, for me, there's layers of where it's easy and I'm completely okay with it. And then if you just go that next layer, then I'm like, yeah, I don't enjoy this anymore. So, it's that level of how far do I want to let people actually into my world, and where does the public brand end and the private Kevin life begin for me. So, I have, you do a ton of really cool posts where you're sharing your insights and thoughts behind things. And I can't pontificate like that. It is harder for me to write that style of post. So I'm really kind of excited for our guest today with a different way that he's gone about making that personal brand, and I'm really kind of interested in how I might be able to use that.
Yeah, it's going to be fun. My first podcast I ever did really that had success was called Success Champions, man. And I had interviewed some amazing guests on there, just had a great time. And I met Mike during that time, and his episode is still one of the most downloaded episodes we had on that podcast because we had just such a fucking awesome conversation. We talked a lot about hype, and we talked a lot about networking and how we could use hype, his style, to build out the networking groups. It was just such a killer advice that he gave me. And I enjoyed enjoyed the shit out of it, and I've been using it. So I've been following his content for quite a while. And if you want to be entertained, I'm telling you, you need to follow some of the shit Mike puts out there. But Mike, I want to tell you, the way you kind of go at Gary Vee and his stuff and use, how he puts out content and shit to really hype up your own stuff is pretty fascinating. Why Gary Vee, and why hyping it up this particular way?
Yeah, I was joking to you at a different point that with everything I've done, the thing that's going to be on my tombstone is that I picked
Right.
a fight with Gary Vee. And first of all, thank you. It's really nice to hear that the episode did so well. I really enjoyed that conversation too. Yeah. I don't know. I think years ago, it was the first article that I ever did that was on the topic that would end up defining my career that got any traction at all. I mean, it was close to a decade ago now. I wrote an article for Inc. called Why Gary Vee or Vaynerchuk is Flat Out Wrong. And I think I was pretty polite at that time. I mean, but he heard the criticism and responded, and I was a nobody. I mean, this was a decade ago. I had just started my own business. And he started out trying to have it together, but by the end he was sweating and his hair was sticking up. Well, if his hair can stick up, which I don't know if that's possible, but it looked like his hair was sticking up. And so I don't know. I've written a whole lot of other articles and done a whole lot of other content on other gurus where I pick apart how they do what they do, and I'm just a sarcastic kind of person, so it comes out that way. But that's the one that gets attention. So, for example, I've recently been doing these videos where I have different comedians come on and we pick apart various internet gurus, and I sort of hone in on why what they do works and the comedians make fun of them. And I've done a ton of different people, but the Gary Vee one, of course, gets brought up more than anything else. So I don't know what that's about.
Well, you also went after Tony Robbins on one, right?
I actually think Gary Vaynerchuk has done some good stuff. I think that his advice to young people is bad, but I think he's a good business person. And I think Wine Library TV, which was his first business, produced a lot of value. I actually think Tony Robbins is going to make a lot of people angry. I think he's bad. I think he's a cult leader. I don't think he has any evidence for what he teaches. I think going on live video and telling someone to pick up the phone and break up with their significant other after talking to them for 15 minutes is abysmal, is horrible. And but he's a he's a
doing
cult leader.
Right.
He's doing something right. So it's a function of it's a function of what you consider right. Is he amazing? Is he amazing? Yeah. Go ahead. I'm sorry.
No, you're good. You're good. It's just he's got 101 companies doing like $7 billion. I mean, so if you look at it strictly from a capitalistic side of things, which he's doing amazingly well, so something's working there.
That's my whole point, right? So right. I think that in terms of of marketing, of sales, of hype, of packaging, of creating an experience, he is fantastic. And anyone who is marketing their products or hyping their products or selling their products should study this guy the way a writer studies William Shakespeare. What I'm saying is the material that he's selling
is shit.
I think it's harmful. I think it's beyond shit. Otherwise, every one of those people in an arena would be as rich as him, but most of them are half broke and they keep coming back for another hit. So, Joel Osteen is great at what he does too. And there's not a person in the world who shouldn't be studying Joel Osteen. But is he taking advantage of his tax exempt status and selling people on a vision that isn't really wonderful, being that this man of God wouldn't let people live in his church, when there was a massive hurricane? Well, I don't know,
No. So Kevin,
but he's one of the best marketers in the world, Tony Robbins. He's fantastic.
Agreed. I don't disagree with your ideals behind it, but I do agree that he's used the hype style that you're such a proponent of to build that particular brand. He's done exactly what all of your TV preachers have done, is preyed on weak-minded people that are looking for the shortcut they're looking for the silver bullet, and he's preying on that mindset that if you show up to a conference or a summit or the likes, it's going to be so transformational that your life is going to be impacted and changed, and you're going to be a millionaire overnight, while he's telling you that's not what he's doing.
I would go even a step far. I agree with every single thing you said, and I would go a step farther. I would even say that he's not even preying on weak-minded people. I would say that he is taking advantage of human biases that every single person has, especially in groups. I know some extremely strong-minded people who are big fans of his stuff. And if you get a thing or two out of it, that's awesome. I think the reason I get up every morning, so I mean, I own what's essentially a marketing company. I wrote a book on this thing that I call hype. And I think the reason that it's not just a job and why I'm so into what I do every day is because I run into so many people who are selling stuff that really make the world a better place. And then I study these other people who make the world worse or who don't make the world a better place. And they understand packaging and psychology so well. And I've just been so convinced by my experience that none of those packaging techniques are immoral. They're just what they are. Human beings can't resist them. So if you can learn those strategies and use them in an ethical way to sell good stuff, I think I could do my small part, or am doing my small part, to make the world a better place. Because unfortunately, it's the people who see the world as a chessboard, people like Tony Robbins, or see other people as chess pieces, who take to that kind of strategy much more easily.
Well, it used to be a common tactic in scams or con artists, back when con artists were doing it all in person. It wasn't just you could post on Facebook and get people to do it, but they all had a hype man. They all had that partner that was in the crowd, that was cheering at everything, that was getting the crowd and whipping the crowd into a frenzy,
100%.
So that they would purchase and they would buy.
You mean like the preacher oil that does the whoosh of the crowd and everybody falls the fuck over, that type of thing?
You see it in so many areas. That's how I know that these strategies aren't specific to a certain field and that they can be used for good. The original manager of the Rolling Stones, which I think we can all agree have brought a lot of joy to a lot of people's lives, when they were first coming out, their manager, this guy Andrew Loog Oldham, would pay a bunch of people to fill a club in London, which is a hub city, and then he would photograph the club and then mail the photographs in this hot club all over the country and tell them that this was happening everywhere in the country. And that human desire to go along with the crowd just blew them up before they were anything.
Awesome. I never heard that story.
Yeah.
It was used in the hip hop and rap scene in the 80s and 90s too. 100%. They all had their hype man that was like, give them a round of applause. All that guy that's yelling stuff in the background. They were all planted. I got the word
from hip hop, because what I noticed was that it's really easy when you've climbed the traditional ladder to do marketing, quote unquote, landing pages and sales funnels. But if you're coming from the South Bronx, the poorest area in the country, hype isn't considered a bad thing. It's what you have to do. Right. And that doesn't mean lying. That means generating a ton of excitement, right? To shortcut the traditional structures that we all play within.
Well, but now you got guys like, Andrew Tate, that has built this personality, right? Like, that's not how he really is, right? But that's the show he puts on out there to drum up. Now, I think he's in prison right now, but he went to prison. Right?
That's what I hear. Yeah.
I think he's still in jail waiting to go to prison. So.
Okay. All right. Well,
but Romania, which is where I'd want to be in prison.
Right. But that's a case of a guy taking hype way too fucking far, right? He built this character, he built this persona up, and I think he's actually doing harmful shit, legitimately harmful.
Not even a question. Not even a question. You have to look at what he's preaching, though. It's not so much the hype. I mean, Andy Warhol created a character, but if you're a fan of art, he did it for a cool reason. Andrew Tate is allegedly a sex trafficker. And the message that he sells is about how to take advantage of women, So he created a character to advance, like you said, really harmful shit.
Yep.
Yeah, because some young kid's going to hear his fucking message and think that's how you should treat women. And fuck you. Any dude who treats a chick like that needs to get his fucking ass whooped.
It's gross. It's disgusting.
So flipping a little bit, then, if we know this hype methodology works, like, I mean, it's a real thing. You can use it in sales, you can use it in conferences and the like, and there's some real extreme value. Cause I think, at the end of the day, selling is really about helping, somebody make a decision, right?
Right.
They wouldn't be sitting across from you if there was an interest. They just don't know if you're the service, you're the product, you're the person. And so every time you're sitting there, you're not actually selling, you're helping them make a decision. Hype can play into it if you use it for the proper way. So how do I use hype in my business to not take advantage of people, but actually use it for good, productive results?
I guess there's two ways of answering this, right? One is the ethical part. And what I make a very strong point to do in my own life, and what I constantly drum into the heads of my clients, is that you need to set up an ethical framework. And if I meet with someone who I think is paying me lip service on that, I won't work with them. And mine is pretty simple. It's never deceive, or never use these things to deceive, and never leave people worse off than you found them. So if you say to me, well, this is hype, of course you have to deceive. Well, then you're missing the point, right? This is not called the liar's handbook, right? This is about getting people emotional so that they can make a good decision. So that's the first thing. And then I guess the second thing is something I often say to clients in a sales scenario, is that I admit one thing that I've never heard another marketer admit, and that's that no marketer, including me, knows what they're doing. And then I pause and they always laugh, And so then I follow up. And what I mean by that is that you can have a knack at what we're calling hype here, or what people call marketing. You can understand the technology. You can get to the bottom of it quicker than other people. But the idea that if you do 3 LinkedIn posts a day, follow it up with a landing page, and have a certain kind of email letter, that's always going to work, that's ridiculous. The minute people know that formula, it's already obsolete.
Yep.
So the framework I use is, we know there are these mass psychology principles. I've practiced them, but also I'm a bit of a nerd, and I was a nerd before I was anything else. So I've read countless books and papers and sort of extracted the principles. However, like, if we know that there's a certain hype strategy, right? Like make war, not love, I call it, that people respond more to being against something than being for something, and you need a strong point of view. You don't know what form that's going to work in. So you know that that's better than not doing it, but you could do that 5, 6, 7 different ways, and it could bomb. So the trick is to have a controlled process of running experiments very quickly, and knowing and killing them the second they show that they're not getting closer to your goal. And then and once you hit your goals with an experiment, to blow it up, right? So you don't just randomly do experiments. You base them on human psychology. But what's going to give you an advantage is doing the thing that people haven't tried before, doing the thing that seems like it might fail, right? Not just following the path. So it's that combination of having an ethical framework, understanding the broad principles, instead of, hey, let's do another Clubhouse room or an Instagram just because everyone else is doing that. And then having a process to quickly run and assess experiments, and cut the ones that don't work and accelerate the ones that do. Now, you should know the tools, right? I mean, technology is a great amplifier, and systems are important. But I think people start in the reverse order. They start with Instagram and then work backwards to the hype or the marketing. You should start with the principles and then match the tool to the principle.
Yeah, it's interesting that you're talking about doing the experiments thing and pulling the ones that don't work. I was this last year I spoke at the Digital Summit, and they had one of the keynotes at the event I was at had actually worked for like Instagram and a couple of social media platforms. And now he talks about how his team, his social media team, they'll put out a post on Instagram and they have their metrics down so well that they know how many likes and how many shares they should have in the first hour. And if they aren't getting that, they pull that post immediately.
That's a great example. Using the technology, but knowing that not everything is going to work. Exactly.
Yeah, and then they'll change the heading, or they'll change the graphic, or they'll change something on it and repost it later in the day, and they'll keep doing that till they get the one that hits. And everyone else, people don't recognize that you pulled a post down. Like no one even has a clue. No one knows.
That's a great example. I used to work, my corporate job before I got into all this was I worked in the BPO industry, which is we ran call centers, right? And I wrote scripts and would go down and train them. And something that my boss at the time said that never left me, and it was totally true, is that he was like a master sales script writer. And I did mostly customer service, but he started in telemarketing. And he would write a sales script that he would spend 3 weeks on. And he would be convinced it was going to just close 1 million deals, and it would bomb. Yeah. And then he would jam one out, before bed because he had a deadline. And that's the one that would
it's so
explode.
Frustrating.
Yeah. Dude, but here was the good thing. I just want to say, then he would dissect. That's the frustrating part. But the good part is then he would dissect what worked about the one that he just jammed out, and he could replicate it. So in other words,
how did he do that? How did he dissect? Because I'm like I say, it's frustrating. Is I'm dealing with this with YouTube. Like on YouTube, I can put a video up, no views, change the fucking title, and next thing you know, it's getting 1,000, 2,000 freaking views. I'm like, how does one word change the algorithm?
Yeah.
Right?
I mean, sometimes it's just luck, but what I would see him do that was really cool, the scripting tool was interesting because you had a bunch of, it was different than social media in a way, because you had a bunch of people on the phone and you could change a line in real time and it would go out to the people on the phone. Right, so he would have the script and that would be the baseline script. And then he would say, okay, we don't know why that worked, but it worked. So then, like, let's say you were selling, at the time he sold mortgages. You had something about private mortgage insurance, phrased a certain way. And he would take that line out and it would go back to the old crappy numbers again. And then he would put the line in. And then he would say to himself, well, I don't exactly know why that line worked, but it did. But then he would think about it. He would say, maybe PMI is less scary than private mortgage insurance because people don't like insurance, right? So he would spend hours and hours and hours doing this. But he never knew exactly, but he could start with what's the main script that works and then cut and then substitute lines. And
that's really cool.
News, it was neat.
Real interaction then there.
Right so there.
Tweet where I'm looking at something from a delayed, spot. So it makes it a little
and it's funny because we always think about how this technology is better now in social media. And that was a pretty crude technology. It was like this DOS-based computer thing, but it really worked well,
That's awesome. So if I'm like our company and the idea of hype. I mean, you and I talked about it when we did the other podcast, that it's in a sense picking a fight, not to pick a fight, but it's standing on a belief system that you truly believe to your core that goes against the mainstream. And that has been a very powerful tool for me to use going forward, trying to pick that fight without intentionally picking a fight. How does somebody come up with that type of concept, that idea? Because there's a lot of that plays into that. One, they're going to have to handle the hate side of things that's going to come at them, because it comes. But two, how do you come up with the concept initially?
Yeah, I'm really glad you brought up that you're picking a fight with an idea, not a person. I think people have this misapprehension that it's about being a troll and that all publicity is good publicity. When I wrote that Gary Vaynerchuk article, I didn't talk about how his fashion sense isn't good or whatever. You know what I mean? I'm not saying it's not, but I didn't insult him the way people do. I talked about.
We now have a clip for the episode. Our
Gary
promo clip.
V dresses horrible.
Yep. Mike Schein says Gary V dresses atrociously.
Yeah, exactly. But that's part of his shtick, right? I mean, that's. I think that's actually a good thing about what he does. But my point is, I was really complimentary to him, and I said that his advice is against what I believe in as a business person. So what I tell my clients to do and what I've done is I ask two questions. I say, and I would encourage anyone listening to this to do this, right? What is a point of view in your industry or in your corner of the universe that is almost like gospel that you vehemently disagree with, and you've almost been secret about it? So for me, it was everyone at the time was all about, if you master social media and just jam it out and work around the clock creating all this content, that you're just going to be a king. And I always disagreed with that because I would see all these kids doing that and not making any money. So I came out and said that. And then I said, and so then the other side of the coin is, what's a point of view that you hold very, very strongly, that you're 100% sure is the case, that other people tend to disagree with? So mine was that ancient mass psychology that never goes away is far more important than specific technology trends. So if you combine those two, it's you're wasting your time hustling on social media and you should focus on this thing that I call hype. And that was an experiment that formed the basis of my career, right? So it's not about, hey, this and this person is an asshole and he has a bad personality, right? It's having a point of view. Because if you don't have a strong point of view, especially in a service business, why are you in business?
Yeah, agreed.
And in a lot of product businesses, Basecamp does this very well, which we can talk about, right?
Well, I think if you the key is you don't make it personal. If you
100%.
If you attack an individual or a brand because you want to pick a fight, you now become an asshole. And not the good kind of asshole that's fun to hang around because they're obnoxious. It's like you're a dick. Why do I want to do business with you? And you're literally just attacking this person. The concept, for us, our big fight right now is in the realm of business networking and what it really should be, and what some large organizations have done to destroy a really effective means to grow your business. And
I love that.
So we're picking fights with the ideas and ways people are doing things, as opposed to, calling out a specific organization. We've gotten to the point where we don't even use their name. We call them Voldemort in our world.
Yeah.
we reference them as Voldemort because
I bet I know who you're talking about. But
probably.
Yeah.
But for us, it's like we don't want to bash them because we actually need them. We need them.
For sure. We say in that context that they're an amazing organization. They've actually built an empire and put networking on the fucking planet.
No, I know who it is, and what got you here won't get you there. I mean, they created was never done before.
Yep.
Yeah.
Right.
And
they're not unethical.
No.
It just isn't enough anymore, because once people get the trick.
Yep.
When I get an email that says, "How can I help you? Here are 3 connections." I know what that is. I know it's a tactic. Whereas in 1985, it was a brand new thing that added a lot to the world.
Yep. And and so this idea is to just wrap that all in. It's not about beating up the damn company. They've done a really good thing.
Yeah.
They've built a really phenomenal fucking business. It's saying that there's a better way that you should be doing this, and here's why.
Right.
And bringing them together, and we've gotten a lot of damn good traction off of having that stance. But and you said it, if you don't stand for something, you don't have a belief in something, then you don't believe in anything.
Why are you in business other than to persuade people that they should give you money?
Yeah, for sure.
That's a hard thing to build.
God, Mike, we could sit here and do this for a freaking while. I almost want to bring you back into an edition and just dive in this deeper and really get more tactical on how people can do this in their business. We probably will do that, but
I'll come anytime. Yeah,
it's awesome. So how do people find you? How do they learn more about you? Where do they get your book and that kind of stuff?
Well, thank you for that. In the old school marketing tradition, it's best to have one call to action. So if you want to learn about my stuff, go to Amazon or wherever you get books and type in The Hype Handbook by Michael F. Schein, spelled Schein. And all the stuff about my company's in there. Microfame Media is the company. I'm sure you'll put the URL in the show notes, but I don't want to confuse people. But check out that book. And if all you do is spend $20 whatever and never need to call me for anything else, I wanted to be a writer before I wanted to be a business person. So that would make me happy too. Yeah.
That's awesome. Well, brother, I appreciate you doing this with us. Thanks for hanging out with us, man. And guys, you go listen to his stuff. It's really funny to go watch some of his social media and the content he puts out. So thanks for doing it, brother.
Well, this was a pleasure. Thanks, guys.
Absolutely. Holy hell, that was a fun episode. I knew it was going to be good because the first time I ever interviewed Michael, I mean, we had some fantastic conversations and some really, really cool takeaways from that. I'm really trying to figure out some of the ways we can apply, some of this stuff to everything we're doing with Success Champions networking and the likes.
All right. So I have a question that we need to talk about I thought about while we were talking to Michael. How do I do that style of posting without sounding like a complete asshole because I'm calling someone out?
I love the question. The answer is really simple, though. Go ahead. Explain more.
For me, it's because I understand how I sound when I communicate. Mostly because you beat me over the head with it all the time.
This is true.
I come across, I'm very direct and I'm very matter of fact about things. And for a lot of people, that sounds like I'm just being a total dick. It comes out when I do customer support. Note to everyone out there, I should not be doing customer support. But I'm afraid that when I do that type of posting like he does, where he points out things that people are doing and talks about them, I'm just going to sound like a dick.
So, two school of thoughts. One, I love the vulnerability behind the question, but the second school of thought is he's not calling out the person. I think that's the difference in the way you need to look at this. He's not calling out the person. He's like, when he talks about Gary Vee, he's not saying, hey, Gary Vee, you're a dick, right? He's not saying you're an idiot, you're not a moron. He's saying the ideology and what he's teaching could be done in a better way.
So you did this morning on social media, which I'm sorry for all the podcast listeners because this is going to be like a few months from now when you so go back on Donnie's page. So
we're recording this on what fucking date? We're recording this on February 20th. So go back to my LinkedIn profile on February 20th.
And you can see the post I'm about to talk about. You did this with a post talking about Giver's Gain.
Yep. Went straight at it. It's a dumbest thing in the
you
world.
went straight at it. So you literally applied this whole concept to that.
So what's the question?
Well, I don't know if it's really a question. I think it's just calling it out.
So
not so much I want to call it out, but I'm just pointing out the fact that, here's how you did it.
Right. So if you go look at that post, one, I never actually say giver's gain. I say the whole idea to giving to gain, right? I put an ing on the end.
All right.
Right. So I purposely did that. I don't want to call out BNI. They're an amazing organization. I'm not attacking or going at them. I'm going after a philosophical difference for me and them because they're wrong. And here's why they're wrong. The entire concept of give to gain has taught people for fucking years that they have to give to gain, right? And I know that the words are trying to say, come from a giving spirit, come from a giving heart, giving thing like that. But that's not how people actually take it. They take it, I've got to give or I can't gain. And it's destroyed the philosophy of networking in the minds of a lot of people.
Or that it builds this entitlement concept.
I gave you this, so you owe me this.
So you have, I've been giving you referrals. Why aren't you passing me referrals?
Yep.
That's exactly what you see.
Yep. And, it's the whole idea that I'm going at, that networking was founded on the principles of people who can't fucking sell. Right. So everything comes from this perspective of a bunch of people who are broke, can't sell, needed to find a different way to try and bring in business. So they bring a whole bunch of people together that can't sell. And now they're all trying to give and expecting something in return. And it's this idea of reciprocity that is why I wrote the entire approach. There is no reciprocity from the aspect of I gave you something, now you owe me something, right? The only way you get reciprocity is from strictly in the sales game is you go out and you freaking sell something, you over deliver that client and you give them 10 times more than they, bought and purchased from you, 10 times more results than they've bought and purchased from you. They're going to become your champion. And that's where a lot of your referrals are going to come from. Your introductions and potentially some referrals are going to come from your network because you're telling them who you need to be introduced to, who can open up the right conversations for you. It's a different philosophical thought. You never should give to gain a fucking thing. You should open the doors because it's the right damn thing to do. And if you got a whole bunch of people to coming together that will open doors because they're proactively out there selling and networking happens to be part of their overall sales strategy, then you don't have the desperation act of, well, I'm giving everybody everything, but nothing's coming to me. It's just mind blowing. I think in that entire post, just to put it in perspective, and we'll put a link to that post in the show notes so people can go get it. But from that perspective, I was purposely not trying to throw BNI under the bus. I was trying to say we have a philosophical difference on the way we approach things. And I think that philosophy has hurt a lot of people in networking over the years.
Oh, and it's interesting. And I was working on this post prior to us interviewing Michael. I put together, the top 4 or 5 things that if you hear at a networking meeting, you should run.
I love the idea of that.
So, but now my thought process is, all right, so instead of doing, or maybe it's a combination, instead of doing, because I was going to do the cool little, fuck, I just forgot the word. The thing with multiple pictures on Instagram.
Oh, carousel.
Oh my God.
Oh, wait, wow.
I'm like Coliseum. I'm like, that is not the word. That is not even remotely close.
So if you're doing an Instagram Coliseum.
Yes. So I was going to do a carousel with the, thank you. You see how me and Donnie's conversations normally go when we're working on things. But I was going to do a carousel about that. But now I'm thinking instead of doing that, I just do them like each one is a separate post. And I'm able to dive into it and give why I think that's just a horrible thing to hear at a networking event and why and what it should be sounding like and things you should be hearing instead of that. So
I like the idea of doing that like almost like a mini series. So maybe like on Monday is here's first one, Wednesday's second one, Friday, or whatever your days of the week that I know you're posting on.
And then do the carousel at the end with all of them. Yeah.
Yeah, I think that'd be really smart. And, it's just a fascinating way to look at, if you stack Michael Schein's interview up with Tony Watley's interview, which was episode 129, and you go listen to Tony, then you come listen to Michael talk about hype. And even throw in there the story brand, the entire concept is all centered around this idea. Yeah, Story Brand was Thomas Van Dyke in episode 126. It's the entire idea of showing up as you, having your beliefs, being able to tell the story, create hype around your brand, and all doing it from a stand-up perspective of not being the asshole out there in the marketplace. So, I wrote a post this past weekend. It took me 2 hours to write the damn thing, and I've never taken that long to write it. But I was really trying to get my point home, and it's not one that I posted out to social media. I only posted it in our private online community as part of Success Champions Networking. But I really wanted to be able to get the words that were in my head out. But that long post is what helped me write that smaller post today that I did on LinkedIn. And I think when you're really trying to define or plant your flag in where your beliefs lie and how you show up, it's not picking a fight. It is literally being able to articulate what you believe to be a truth, and go against somebody. So fun episodes, man. I'm really enjoying these rounds and these interviews because we're getting some amazing stuff. But we're gonna be bringing a couple of these guys back.
Yeah, after I do my my post series, we'll drop a link in the show notes as well, so you can actually see Donnie's example of using hype from Michael, and then you can actually look at my attempt. And we would love to hear from you what you think about the post and how it applied to what you learned from Michael earlier today.
Absolutely. So as always, guys, if you got any values, tips, tricks, anything out of this episode that can benefit you, if you're watching on YouTube, please do us a favor and make sure you subscribe and ring the bell. But one of the coolest things you can do is take a picture on your phone, screenshot, or on your computer, wherever you're watching this, and post out on social media that you're listening or watching to this episode. Tag me and Kevin in it. It would mean the world to us. And keep sending in your comments and questions. We love the feedback. And a couple of you have even picked a fight with us saying that we were wrong about a couple of things. So don't worry, we'll come at you on those. Those will be fun. So, but as always, love you, mean it. See you, bye.